Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah Macintyre. And today is a very exciting day. I know I say that every time, but it is, because I'm talking to a beautiful soul, an author, Melanie Veares, today. And Melanie really wonderfully sent me a copy of her book, which I know I've mentioned on the podcast before, My Forever Heart, to have a look at and read and review. And it was the first time I'd been asked to review a book, so it was very exciting for me. And it was an absolutely amazing book that really helped open me up to some different ideas and theories when working with the spirit world. So hi, Mel, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. So if you could just start off by telling the listeners a little bit about what started your journey with the spirit world, how you got into all of this.
Okay, so I'd like to say that I've been seeing spirit from when I was a child, but I haven't. Back in 1999, when I was 31, my husband at the time unexpectedly took his own life, and it was absolutely devastating. We had two boys who were 2.5 and 5, and I was just totally shocked, totally lost. I'd never experienced anything like it. I'd never really experienced death before. My grandfather had died, but he was sort of 86, and this was my sort of first taste of death, and it was just absolutely shocking. And I think what happened was, I was in shock for a couple of days, and then because I was always a bit of a scaredy cat, I didn't like being in the house on my own at night. I've always been a little bit scared of my own shadow. And because the boys were so young, for the first few nights, my mother and mother-in-law took it in turns to sort of stay with me because I was sort of so scared. And it got to sort of night 3, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I've got to try and get my life back to some order. I've got to get back into the swing of things. I just needed to have my space. So I remember going to bed at night and being absolutely terrified. I mean, now it sounds embarrassing saying it, but I just remember laying in bed being so scared. And then all of a sudden I had this really warm feeling starting from my feet. And it was like somebody was sort of putting a warm cotton wool blanket all over my body. And I remember just floating up above the bed and just feeling totally loved, this beautiful, warm feeling, as if I was sort of back in the womb and was just sort of swaying. And then the next thing I remember, I opened my eyes and it was the morning.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, what happened? And since that moment, I was never, ever scared again. I mean, we had this pervy neighbour next door. And a couple of months after my husband died, at 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on the door. And I went down there and he said, "Oh, can I borrow a cup of sugar?" So I said, "No, you can't." And, sort of went to shut the door. And he went, "Actually, I've locked myself out. Can I sleep on your settee?" So I shut the door, locked it up, heard him go back into his house. And I thought, do you know what? I just didn't feel scared. I felt so empowered and so strong. And I just knew that something had happened. I'd had some sort of healing. I didn't think it was my husband, but I knew that something had happened.
Yeah.
And then about 8 months later, I was really drawn to go and see this medium. I'd never seen a medium before. I didn't really know what to expect. But all these synchronicities happened, and I went and saw this lovely lady, and she just gave me this most amazing reading. It was about an hour long, which is really unusual. And she just knew so much about my life. She knew so much about what had happened. She knew how my husband had died. She was telling me some stuff about the future, but loads about my past. And I thought, this is stuff she just couldn't have made up. And there was even stuff that I didn't know about it. She was saying that I can see somebody selling fruit and veg off a barrow. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure who that is. But when I spoke to my dad on the phone, he said, that was me. He said, when I was 15, that was me. I used to do that. And my nan came through. She'd had MS. And it was wonderful. And this lady said to me, you have got the most beautiful guardian angel with you. She said, I've never seen an angel so beautiful. And I told her about the experience, and she said, that would have been your guardian angel. She also said that your husband is saying that if he knew then what he knows now, he would never have done it. And he was obviously very, very sorry. And that he's going to guide you when you're ready to meet somebody else. And I'm like, no way. I don't, I just want to concentrate on the boys. I'm not interested in meeting anyone else. But the reading was amazing. And then she sort of said, well, you could actually do this yourself. You could do this. I can see you doing healing. She said, I run groups. Why don't you come along to it? And I was very much, not at the moment. It's not the right time. The boys were so young. Mm-hmm. Although I wanted to, and I was sort of really excited about it, I just thought, no, I need to put this on the back burner. So 2 years later, I met my husband. He called me the Iced Queen because he said I was so offish and not wanting to sort of engage with him at all. But he was a friend of my sister's and her husband. Mm-hmm. But on the second meeting, I really, really liked him, and very quickly we got together, which I never thought I would. Mm-hmm. And he is just the love of my life. He's got 3 children, and he's sort of, well, he just loved my boys like they were his, and we became this blended family, and it was lovely. I loved his children, he loved mine, and yeah, it was beautiful, and it still is. We're very, very happy. And then life went on, and then maybe 5 years later, we had another tragedy where my niece from my first husband, who was 17 and absolutely beautiful, inside and out, she was just this gorgeous girl, got killed in a car crash. She was on her way to a night out. The driver had taken drugs and was driving too fast, and she hadn't got a seatbelt on, and she died. And it just left another huge hole in the family. I think that's when I thought, why? We've had our tragedy. Why have we had this happen again? I thought I was safe and that we wouldn't have anything else again. Mm-hmm. But, the family pulled together. This was my first husband's family, but my husband now gets on really well with them, and we're really close to the family, and we still are. So, yeah, we sort of all pulled together, and it was terrible, but life moved on. And then in 2011, my dad, who was 64 at the time, got diagnosed with 2 brain tumours. And he was so fit and healthy and full of life, and we just could not believe it. Mm-hmm. And I just remember thinking, there is no way you are dying, Dad. There's just no way this is going to happen. And we went to see the consultant, and the consultant said, he's got 3 months at the most. It's very, very aggressive. And that's when I started to have these sort of synchronicities happen. People started talking about spiritual healing, about faith healing. Mm-hmm. And then I was led to the spiritualist church near where I live. Never been to anywhere like it again. But I remember I went in my lunchtime. I was ever so nervous. But I went in and I said what had happened. And he was lovely. He was sort of in his 70s, and he said, come in, my love, sit down. I'm going to give you some healing first because I feel that you need it. And it was the most incredible experience. I mean, I just came out of there feeling on cloud 9. There was so much love. I saw steam coming off of me, colours. I thought, what is going on? But he put me in contact with somebody near where my dad lived. So my dad, who at the time was struggling to walk, he had aphasia, which meant that his words were coming out all gobbledygook. But my mum and my sister, one of my sisters and me, took him to have some healing, and it was the most profound experience ever. So it was quite a dark little room, but I could see smoke. It looked like smoke coming off of my dad's head everywhere. He was shaking, he was crying, and I'd just never seen my dad cry really. But he was crying. He was so emotional. But he was enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were two men doing the healing on my dad, and we were just blown away by it. And they both turned around to me and my sister and said, "Look, you two are healers. You could do this for your dad. Do you want us to teach you so you can do healing on your dad?" And we were like, yes, please. So we jumped at the chance. So me and my sister and these two healers, these two guys, and another two people joined our group. So we had 3 men, 3 women. And we sat in circle for 8 years. Every Thursday I did my spiritual healing, which my assessment was done by the very first medium that gave me that reading, which was lovely.
Amazing.
My Reiki 1, my Reiki 2, my Reiki master. We did cabinet work, we did channeling, we did scrying, we did table tipping, we did meditations that were just so amazing. We were all seeing the same thing, because by that time we were sort of so connected and so in tune. So that's really how I got into the healing. And my dad, he was given 3 months and he lasted 2 years.
Wow.
Given him regular healing, and he had the most beautiful death. He was surrounded by my mum and his 3 daughters. And I just feel so privileged that I was, we were able to say to him, "You can let go, Dad, it's all right, just go to the light." Mm-hmm. There was so much spirit in that room, and we were able to look above us and sort of know that he was there going off, and it was just beautiful. And if I hadn't have gone through this journey, that would never have happened for my dad. So I am so grateful to Spirit that I'd learned what I did, so I was able to give Dad a beautiful death, or we all were.
Amazing.
And then the losses kept happening. So my brother-in-law, he was found dead in his house. My husband had a phone call saying that the milk bottles had been left out for a couple of days. Nobody had seen him come out. Mm-hmm. My husband had gone around there. The police were there. And he died in his sleep. So that was a sort of another shock. Mm-hmm. And then a year after that, my beautiful mother-in-law, who's my first husband's mother, she got cancer and she died within 6 weeks. And that was really tragic, especially to my boys, because that was their link to their dad. Mm-hmm. So that was a big thing for them. But she was a beautiful lady. She was lovely. And then 3 months after her husband died. I think he died of a broken heart. So again, that was all of a sudden they'd been completely wiped out. And I think, my boys found that really hard. And the family did. It was just sort of another loss that hit us. And then 3 years after that, the worst tragedy of all struck. My beautiful youngest son, who was 20 at the time, took his own life. And it was totally unexpected. He was struggling with life. He struggled with uni. I think he was fine until he got to an adult. And then he was such a sort of sensitive soul, so gentle, that he found life really hard. He didn't want the sort of typical life where you get a job, you get married, you have children. He used to say he just felt he didn't belong in this world. We used to have really deep conversations about spirit and about things. He was like my because a lot of the family just thought I was a bit, you know what it's like. Yeah. They sort of let me get on with it, but he used to really listen. We had, deep, meaningful conversations. And, his death was absolutely horrifying. It was horrendous. It was even spiritual as I am, it was so physically painful. I mean, when people say, you know, your heart is ripped out of your chest, I was shocked at the depth of pain that you physically feel. It's emotionally and mentally, but the physical pain, the first couple of days, it was like I was on my knees. I thought, I can't breathe. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then the day after he died, me and my husband had to go and visit him in the hospital morgue, and we were trying to eat a bowl of soup. Our stomachs were churning. It was awful. And then all of a sudden, the telly flicked on with Band of Brothers, and that was his favourite programme, that him and my son used to watch it over and over and over again. And it just came on the telly, and it was like, oh, thank you, Luke. Thank you for sort of doing that, you know, keep it coming, because it was just so lovely. I mean, we were both sort of shocked, but over the years, with all the losses we'd had, every time someone died, we used to get a lot of electrical stuff happen. So light bulbs exploding, lights going on and off, TV remotes turning over, particularly loud crashes in the house. That was really significant. We'd had loads of sort of crashing noises. So that was happening as well, which was lovely. And then about 2 weeks after my son had died, I'd gone back to sit in my group, because I think my sort of mentors were worried that I would turn my back on sort of spirituality and spirit, but I didn't. I felt I needed to get back to it. I needed to get close to him. And we were having a meditation, and it was a bit unusual because it was a meditation where I felt actually quite close to the earth. It was very dark. And I remember we were walking past this huge bonfire. So somebody was leading us through on this guided meditation. But it was different to the normal meditations. And halfway through it, I could hear my son going, Mum, Mum. And he came running up to me. And I was like, oh my God. And he looked so young and so healthy. And he had his friend's dog with him. So a couple of weeks after he died, his best friend's dog died, and he loved that dog. He was allergic to dogs, so he couldn't keep dogs. But anyway, he had Harvey, this dog, with him. And he just said, Mum, I can't talk for long. Your guides let me come through. And my guide, I could see him. He was my guide called Paul. He had a very simple robe on, but I knew he was very important. And I just remember looking at him, just being so grateful. And I was like hugging my son. I could actually feel him, smell him. It was so real. And he just said, Mum, everything you've said is true. Everything you've said is true. Your guide is the top man round here. You know, and I was like so chuffed. And he said, I've got to go now. I can't stay long. I've got to go. But I didn't tell anyone in my meditation group because I just wanted to keep it to myself. I came out of it, and the rest of the night I was like a bit shocked. But when we got outside, I told my sister, and it was really lovely. And again, I was so grateful that happened. And I think that's the only time that I've really connected to him as if I feel like he's in the room.
Yeah.
Then about 2 years after he died, I was drawn to go and have another reading. And I didn't want to have a reading with a medium that knew me or knew stuff about me. So I actually had a reading with Louise, Essex medium.
Oh, yeah.
Who's actually been on your podcast.
Yes, she has.
So I remember sort of sitting in her lounge. I mean, Louise is beautiful, isn't she? She's beautiful to look at, but she's a lovely person. But she was on the phone for some reason because she had to speak to the school, and I was a bit early. But I remember thinking, oh, the sun's just turned up. And then I could just feel all these spirits coming into the room. So she led me into her dining room where she got all the candles lit and everything else. And all the candles just went whoosh, and they just all went out. And she was like, oh my God, there's so much spiritual energy here. What's going on? And then she gave me an amazing reading. Again, it was about an hour long because the person who was supposed to come either before or after me had a tyre blowout on the A12. I'm sure that was arranged by spirit. So I got extra. And again, it was lovely. I mean, my son came through, my husband, all of them came through, everyone came through. And one of the things she'd said, which I needed validated because that's what my son was saying to me. Whereas my husband had a choice whether he lived or died, with Luke, what he was saying to me was that he knew he wouldn't make old bones, and I knew this is something that we'd agreed before we were born. And he wasn't going. He knew when he was born that he wouldn't live till he was, an older age. And she actually brought that through for me, which I needed that validated, because sometimes you still question yourself, don't you? You have all these things, and mine comes through very much as a knowing. And I think, I wish I could just hear him or see him clearly, but it's more of a knowing. So it was nice that she validated it for me, and she brought up loads of stuff. I mean, at the funeral, I decided to have it at the football club because he was football mad. Both my boys are. They played football from a very young age. He was still playing football. So I hired out the football club, and we had the wake in one side of the building. The other was like a pub side where we had his music playing and Domino's pizzas delivered and stuff. But I hired the football courts out, and I said to all his friends, because I thought there's going to be all these 20-year-olds turning up, probably never experienced death. There's alcohol there. And I just wanted them to sort of, I don't know, I thought if they can play football together, that would sort of help them get through the day. And I think I didn't realise this, but a lot of people said to me afterwards, we thought you were mad when you said you were going to hire the football courts out. But actually, it worked perfectly. It helped everyone, really, because at times it was like 20 a side in a football court, and all the boys were getting on well, and then they would dip back and have a pizza and listen to his music, whereas the sort of old fogies were in the hall having a sort of more traditional way. So, and he kept bringing through to Louise, I love the football, and she said, did you have a memorial match or have a football or something? Because she said he keeps saying at the funeral about this football, and I went, no, we did play football. And she's like, what?
Oh, amazing.
But then I explained it, and he said, he loved it. And there was so much he brought through. But one of the things he said was, Mum, you're going to write a book. And she said, are you writing a book? And I said, no. I said, I've just been to a book launch of a friend's, and my husband did say to me in the car, you ought to write a book, because I do like writing. But I said, no, I've got no plans to write a book. And she said, well, he's saying, Mum, you've got to write this book. I'm going to help you, and you've got to write it. It's going to be really good. And I said, well, what's it going to be about? And she said, I don't know. She said, maybe it's sort of about helping people with their grief and things. And I thought, oh, that sounds a bit depressing, really. And I said, oh, okay. So I sort of left the reading and thought, I'll think on that one. And then another year went by, and I still hadn't done anything about the book. And I had another reading, and again he came through saying, you haven't written this book, you've got to write this book. And then very soon after that, we went into lockdown. And then in lockdown, I started to get the seeds of an idea. A lot of my stuff actually comes through when I'm laying in the bath. I know they say about meditation and everything else, but when I'm laying in the bath, and I just get loads come through, or when I'm waking up in the morning, it just sort of comes into my mind. So I got the seeds of an idea, and then it was just coming in like a movie. I couldn't write it quick enough. So I wrote the book in a few weeks, but then I had to sort of go back and pad it out. And some of the concepts that are in the book, I sort of had them in my head, but I wasn't sure how I was going to sort of get them out. And I needed them explained a bit better, because, it takes a lot to get your head around it. And incidentally, 5 years ago, I did a degree. I got a first in psychoanalysis, which is psychoanalytical studies. I had no intentions of going back to school, certainly not university. I'd left school at 16 on a YTS scheme, so I had no interest. And I was working at a school, working with families and vulnerable children and that sort of thing, pastoral care. And I was asked to do this degree, which helps support these families. And I said, oh no, I can't do a degree. And then in one of my healing group, one of the ladies was a doctor, a psychiatrist. And she said, you must do that course. And again, I said, oh no, I can't. I haven't been back to school since I was 16. I just couldn't do it. I haven't got A levels. Mm-hmm. She said, I'm sure it's just work-based. It's not A levels. Anyway, the summer holidays came, and my boys were at an age where they didn't really need me, and the house was tidied, and I was a bit bored, and I cleaned the house from top to bottom, and I'd gone into the bathroom, and when I come out, in front of me on the hall was the leaflet for this course. Now, it was not there. I mean, I probably did bring a leaflet home, but it definitely wasn't there, and this was August, and it started September. And I just looked at it and I thought, someone's trying to tell me something. Yeah. So I went down and I phoned up this course, and I got straight through to the director of the course. And I said to him, look, I haven't been back to school for years. I'm really worried about this. I haven't got A levels. And he said, you will be perfect for this course. So he told me where to go for the student finance. He told me where to enroll. And then literally 4 weeks later, I'm sitting at the university in a room of like 16 people, all sort of similar age to me. And I absolutely loved it. It was psychoanalysis. So it's looking at Freud and Melanie Klein. And it really, because I thought it would sort of go against my spirituality, but it didn't at all. Everything linked in, even like the clairsentience and the projection and all that sort of stuff. I loved it. And so I was working full time, plus doing the university, plus doing the healing, plus I had the family. But because I loved it all, everything just seemed to flow. Yeah. So, and I got a first, which I couldn't believe.
Nice.
But I think I was led to do that course because when it came to these concepts, without having that sort of studying, I would have found it really hard to get my head around it. Mm-hmm. But because I've done that course, I mean, it's helped me in everyday life. It's helped me with my healing, with my clients. But I think a lot of it was to do with writing this book, even though it was sort of 5 years previous. It's like everything just flows, doesn't it? If you go with the flow, spirit, open up your path and everything comes in when you need it. So yeah, the concepts I had to work on a little bit because I thought, how am I going to get this down on paper? And have I actually understood it properly? Because a lot of people are going to think she's mad, she's a bit crazy. Yeah.
I love it. Right. Oh, so much to pick through in all of that. And the first thing I really want to say is thank you for sharing your story, because you've been very brave there. And it's such an interesting thing, really, that you have experienced such painful losses and so many horrendous and painful losses. But your story, the story, My Forever Heart, is very positive. It's a very uplifting tale, isn't it, of the continued existence of spirit and what happens afterwards. Of course, there's poignancy in there, and your main lady, Grace, she has gone through things and experienced things, and again, her own sadnesses and her own losses. But it is such a positive, uplifting book, and you would never think that intellectually, obviously I know because I do this for a living, but intellectually you would never think such a positive story could come through from such heartache. And I think it's wonderful that you share that for people.
So thank you. I mean, I did want that positivity to come through, because I'm not downplaying my grief or anybody's grief, because that will be with me forever. And, you know, the heaviness in my heart now, I actually, whereas before I thought, how am I going to cope with this? It hasn't gone away. I've learned to live with it, but it's like I'm carrying him round with me. And that gives me, you know, a bit like he's in the womb, but he's in my heart. And it's like every sort of wedding, birth, whatever that happens in the family, it is a double-edged sword when someone dies, because it's not right that they're not there. But to me, he is here, he is there, you know. And so thank you for for saying
it's
that.
very brave of you to share it. And the thing is, that is the message, isn't it? Always the message in all mediumship, I think, is that we're not missing anything. We are here. We are just separate but still here, but and different but still here. So let's talk about the book. So tell us a little bit about a synopsis of the story. Don't give away spoilers. But what is your tale the tale of?
Well, so it starts with Grace Sullivan, the main character, who's 86, and she's on her deathbed, and it starts off with her sort of knowing that she's going to die, wanting to die, because she wants to see her husband and her son, who had died many years previous. And she's in the nursing home, sort of saying goodbye to her other son, who is not really a believer. He wants to be. He's had evidence, but he's one of these scientific people that needs a lot of evidence. Bit like my oldest son. And so the journey follows her actually dying in the second chapter, and being born back into heaven. And there she's met by her loved ones, particularly her son and her ascended master. And there they sort of take a journey through heaven where she revisits her past lives. She revisits her many lives as Grace. And then she merges back with her soul and does a life review, looking over her current life, only to sort of merge back with her soul family afterwards. And
it's amazing, because you have really got the balance in that book between some very clever concepts that are verging on beyond my intelligence, but there's some really deep spiritual philosophies, but it's very accessible. And I think because you're following the character's story, it helps to make it make sense to us.
Yes.
So it's rather really lovely. And obviously I just recognized a tale that's of the dog and the allergies is in the book, isn't it? And every medium that brings my son through, they all say he's got a dog with him. and he does. I love that. I absolutely love that. Now it was a really interesting, some of the concepts for me really interesting. So let's talk about, past lives. I think most people understand the concept. We don't. One of the things that I find really interesting that came from your book with the many lives and the past life context is, I understand that time is a human construct. I hear that from spirit a lot. I go, I've got that. But then actually your book really triggered a philosophical process for me to go through with my spirit team about the fact that all of our lives are lived simultaneously. And that, we are having past lives, but we are also whole, and it's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing.
It is. And sometimes I just imagine a bit of puff of smoke coming out of one of my ears. It's just gone, your brain is not, it's just done. So the many lives concept, I had not heard, apart from sliding doors and stuff like that, but no one I've ever read has really explored that concept of the same life, but with different outcomes and different experiences, and how that impacts on somebody. And you do that with Grace through the book, don't you? With her children and her life and her husband. And that was, I'm assuming that came from spirit. You told me part of your book was channeled, because that is amazing to me. So how did they give that to you? Because that's a huge
it was weird, because it's sort of, so I sort of had a knowing that I'd had a life where I couldn't have children. And when one of the things I'd say about this life is that from a very young age, I craved having children. I love babies, I love children, and I desperately wanted children. And when I was trying to have children, my first son took a year to fall, and my second son was like 8 months. But I could really relate to these people that couldn't have children, but didn't really think too much of it. I just thought I like children, I like babies. But there was also another concept. So when in meditation, I kept seeing like the base self. It's so hard to describe it, but I kept seeing like, if you imagine a base self, like a person, and then lots of lives peeling off of that, all at the same time, all living out at the same time. And I spoke to sort of my mentors about it, and they said, well, yes, it is possible. And I know quantum physicists had sort of said it's possible.
Yeah.
But my brain, I mean, you know, it's a hard thing to actually go through. So I'd always sort of had that feeling that there is this base self. So you're literally in heaven, this base self, and if you know, like in cartoons when you see people die and then the body sort of peels off, all of these lives living but feeding back into this sort of base self. So all of the knowledge and everything you can sort of link into. So it's like your higher self. When you link to your higher self, you're actually linking to this base self in heaven with all of this information. So all of these lives that live, you can just tap into it. You know, so when you go within, you don't need anyone else. You know, we tend to seek answers, but it's all there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just past lives. It was the same life. So the only way I could think of describing it is the library thing with the book. So that each book is like a Melanie Veares book.
Yeah.
And then every page is a different life that Melanie Veares has lived.
Yeah.
And then another book will be like a past life, so, you know, like a completely different life where you change your character, colour, creed, sex, you know. But yeah, it was like I could feel it and I could see it, but I didn't know how to explain it to people. And it's still not a very good explanation. I still can't, you know, I still can't. And actually, interestingly enough, I'd read the Conversation with God books. I don't know if you've read them, by Neil Donaldson Walsh. So he wrote 3 books, and my daughter was very much into spirituality, and I thought, I'm going to get them for her birthday. I'd read them years ago. But when I went back, I'd seen that he'd written another book called Home with God, and I thought, oh, I'm going to order that for me. So I'd ordered it, and it sat on the shelf for a couple of years. Yeah. And when I'd sent this book off to be published, and it was lockdown, I thought, I'm going to read that. Well, in that book, he talks about the life review, which I thought, oh, life review, that's in my book.
Yeah.
But also he talks about when you die and you have your life review, you can decide that you don't want to die. So you're going to come back, which I do mention in my life review. And then he explains that you don't sort of go back to that life. So that life will carry on without you. So if you died in a car crash and then you had your life review and you decided you needed more to do in this life, the life where you died would carry on with you being dead.
Yes.
But you will go back and it would split off and you would carry on from that point living that life as if you'd never had that car crash. So and then he explains about time as in time is not linear. You can go up, down, a bit like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with the glass lift. You can go up, down, sideways, whatever. And that's how sort of Spirit explained it to me with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory thing, because that made sense to me. And I read that and I thought, oh yeah, he is touching a bit on, that book is touching a bit about the many lives you lead. So that was sort of a bit of a coincidence.
Or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Synchronicity.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, Spirit know, don't they?
Yeah.
And you channeled that. The author of that book channeled that. So it doesn't surprise me at all.
Exactly. And the thing is, with spirit, they don't have time, so they don't ever really miss us because they're with us all the time. It's us left behind, isn't it, that have the pain of not having them around us. But I also get a comfort to know that I have had many lives with my son where I did see him grow up, I did see him marry, I did see him have children. That brings me a lot of comfort. But
I think I really picked that up from your book, actually, is the idea that somewhere there is a part of you experiencing that life with them still. Which is, it doesn't take it away, but it's kind of lovely to have that, to know that is happening. It's beautifully done the way you do it, because you can really immerse yourself in it and experience it. So this is something interesting, because this is one of the questions that I wrote down about your book is, and you mentioned it already, so I was like, aha, is the choice versus predestined. So because some people believe that our path is our path and we come here and we live it out, and some people believe that we create as we go along our path. I'm kind of a hodgepodge. I'm a little bit between the two. I think there's certain things that we agree will happen to us, that we have, that's the soul contract, we're here, and then there's other things that we choose. Where do you sit with that?
I think that you can go against your soul contract. We've got free will.
Yes.
So you don't have to follow what I think when you come in, it's not set in stone. So you don't know how you're going to die, or you don't know when you're going to die. You just know that is the sort of loose contract that you've come in with. And actually, I think that we have free will. So we do not have to follow that. I think when we follow our path, we have more meaningful lives, maybe.
Yes.
When you're doing the right thing, sometimes everybody is against you, saying, oh, you don't want to go for that job, oh, it's less money, what are you doing, blah blah blah. But you know that you need to go to that job, even though it's not on paper. It's less money, it's not a job, and you might actually hate it, but from the job you've taken, that leads you on to something else better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, if you can follow your gut and your intuition, then that's following the middle path, isn't it? And I think that, but I think it would be a bit boring, wouldn't it, if it was all laid out and you had to follow it exactly. I mean, where is the creativity in that?
And where's the learning in that? Because
there isn't.
If your soul knows how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I think it's very loosely done, and you don't have to follow it if you don't want to.
Yes, I definitely think there's free will.
Yeah, but I think that if you can link to your intuition in your gut, then and how many times has things been delayed by 5 years because you veered off on another path, but eventually you've come back to it. So maybe 5 years earlier you could have arrived there, but you've just taken the long route. And so what? And I think failing's good. I mean, we never ever we sort of always look at failure as a bad thing, especially like when I worked in the schools. It was all English, maths, science, and you're not allowed to fail and everything. And I think, why? Failing's good, because you learn better, don't you, from your mistakes?
Absolutely.
And if everything was sort of privileged and came to you easily, where would the sort of fun and accomplishment and satisfaction come from?
Absolutely.
Trying different things and
Absolutely. So a couple of things that I wanted to touch on that I know we spoke about a little bit when we were chatting beforehand, but so one of the things I want to be very clear on for people that are listening who may have lost somebody to suicide. Sorry, I've got a pipe if you can hear that.
No, I can't.
Marvelous. I'm really glad that's picking up on the podcast. Got an annoying pipe in the house. But one of the things that comes up a lot is obviously when people take their own lives, and the idea of the very religious concepts that view that as a sin. And in my experience as a medium, that they are the same as everybody else. And I'm assuming that from your book that it's the same.
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather was a very strict Catholic. He was a lovely man. He was a very strict Catholic, and when my first husband died, his reaction was, "Oh, I hope he's been murdered and not taken his own life." And he wasn't meaning it in a horrible way, but his religion was so set that would be terrible for him. Mm-hmm. And no, absolutely not. That, to me, that is not the case at all. When you die from suicide, you are met by your loved ones, by loving spirit. You will get healing as soon as you arrive in spirit. Mm-hmm. And no, it's not that horrible experience. And I really want people to know that, because I know my son is really happy in spirit, and he is loved. And and even my first husband, when I've connected with him, you know, I'm sure they might need extra healing.
Yes.
But no.
Yeah. And I think they must need healing because they see what it does to the people that remain. And that is, you know, it's a tough, I don't think anyone takes that choice lightly.
No.
And I think it must be very hard for a soul in a space of love and light. People, I know you mentioned this in your book, but people that have made horrible decisions where they've taken other people's lives or hurt other people and things like that. You know, they are still loved. We are all still loved, and we all go to the same place. And it must be, I think it must be incredibly hard to be surrounded by love and being loved.
Yeah, I think people, the amount of people that would say things like, you know, oh, it's selfish and that sort of thing. These people are ill. Yeah. They're just, you know, they're unwell. Can you imagine the sort of pain it must have caused them to sort of leave their loved ones and know that they're just not in the right place, and it's an illness like anything else. And I think the world at the moment is a really hard place to be. Mm-hmm. And I think especially for the young people, there's so much pressure on them to, you know, go to university just to get a job that doesn't need a university degree. But we're not focusing on things like apprenticeships, the people that are more practical, or, you know, just don't want to follow that sort of path. And I think if you're sensitive at the moment, with everything that's going on, it's hard. And we're losing community and communication, and you know, one of the biggest things I think for me when I've had struggles with my mental health has been that it's not forever. You have this kind of feeling that it's, when you're in it, you feel like it's a permanent state, and you think I can't exist like this for eternity. But I'm lucky in the fact that I have managed to come out the other side of it, and when it does blip, I go, well, it won't be forever. And having that thought that I know it will pass makes such a difference. Whereas when I was younger, I just thought this was how my existence was going to be. Exactly. And I think it doesn't help that these people that go to the doctors and they're put on antidepressants and things, the side effects are horrendous. I mean, and I think if we could turn to more sort of natural things like healing, diet, connecting with nature. And talk, connecting with nature, getting out of that space. I think, medication will work for some, but it's not a fix-all, and we need to look at it. I mean, I'm not suggesting that anyone doesn't go to the doctor and doesn't take medication, but I know, you know, I mean, my son tried it and the side effects were terrible for him, so he just stopped taking it immediately. And then you don't go back, you don't ask for help. And it's a very prescriptive route we have for people who So yes, amazing. So there's so much there, and I don't want to talk too much about the book because I would love for listeners to go and buy it and read it and have their own journey with it, because I don't want to put my take on everything in there. It should be something that people come at fresh, if you know what I mean. And I got things from it the second time I read it that were different from the first, so you know that there's real depth in there. I love it. Thank you. So thank you very much for coming on. Now, your website is MelanieVeares.com. MelanieVeares.com. I know that you can Google you and it just comes up as well. And so on your website, you've got some healing meditations as well, haven't you, for people to... Yes, so I've got 2 albums on there. Each album has got 3 meditations. And if anyone wants to buy it, if they click on the purchase and there's a little promotion code, if they put 25%, all in capitals, 25 the number, they'll get 25% off as well. Anyone that's listening to this, you can put that in and you'll get 25% off.
Excellent. So is that 25 the word percent?
The number 25 and then the word percent in capitals with no gap.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. How lovely. That's a treat for everybody. Thank you very much. And your book can be bought through your website as well?
Yeah, it can be bought from my website, which takes you onto Amazon.
Excellent.
And then, you can just click onto Amazon.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing your heartache, but also your learning and how spirit have helped you. It's been fantastic to talk to you. And
thank you, Hannah. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.